could say I was fat, dumb, and happy. I'm really not fat. It's just a figure of speech. But I was dumb because I thought I was in a solid marriage. I was wrong. She's a lying cheater. I'm John T. Miller. My friends call me JT or Beer Man. They call me Beer Man because I brew 5-gallon batches of beer in my home. Most guys in my beer club keg their beer. I, however, bottle mine. My wife, Dawn, drinks wine. She hates beer. Aukter Kamos, I don't have a beer belly. I work out 5 days a week at the gym. My family has a history of heart problems, so I exercise, watch what I eat, and monitor my salt intake. I am 6'3" and weigh 192 pounds. For 8 years ago, I left corporate America to start my own company, which is doing very well. Dawn works for a top 50 corporation. She's been with them for 24 years. She started in the aid department as an analyst. A month after our wedding, a little over 5 years ago, she moved into a position as an instructor in the education division. The company requires her to attend at least 20 days of education a year to stay current with changing technology. At 46, Dawn is a knockout. She is 5'8" and weighs 118 pounds, and she does not look like a woman who's had 2 children. She's a runner and meets 6 other women on our block each morning at 6 o'clock to run 6 miles. Our daughter Emily is 22. She graduated from Florida State, and she's a first-grade teacher in Naples. Slight like her mother. Emily is a runner. She started running with her mom's group at the age of 14. I'm proud to say she likes the beer I make. She found a beer club in Naples and joined. When able, I attend with her. Our son Kent is a 21-year-old senior at the University of Florida. It is very entertaining to listen to his sister and him go at each other. Then we'll drink my beer. Since it's free, the price is right for a college student. He's a good student looking forward to joining my business. I told him he needs to work in corporate America for at least 5 years before I'll hire him. I believe he needs real-world experience. Dawn does not like beer and cannot stand the smell in our house when I boil a batch. I always schedule boiling a new batch of beer when Dawn travels. She's in Dallas this week, and I'm making an English brown ale. I thought life could not get any better. Little did I know it was getting ready to change. Bobby, one of my beer club members, called and asked if I would pick him up at the airport last Wednesday night at 8:30. Of course. I said yes, and it would cost him a 6-pack of his award-winning porter. As I walked into the baggage claim area, I saw 3 of Dawn's fellow instructors exiting. I wondered why Dawn wasn't with them, so I pulled out my cell phone and called her office phone. Normally, I call her cell phone. I can't remember the last time I called her office. Her message said, "Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Dawn Miller. I will be out of the office in Dallas teaching a class until Wednesday, and will be on vacation Thursday and Friday. Please leave a message at the tone, and I will return your call on Monday." It's about this time I saw Bobby coming my way, so I walked over to join in. I told Bobby what I knew and how confused I was. Bobby suggested I call Steve, who's another member of our beer club, to get his opinion. Steve is a detective with our local police department. Before I called Steve, I decided to call Dawn. After she said hello, doing my best to sound normal, I replied, "Just wanted to call and hear your voice. I cannot wait to hold you in my arms." "Well, what brought this on? Are you wanting to have some fun?" We both laughed. "Yes, I'm going to make love to you as soon as you get home Friday. I'm sure you can't wait till Saturday. Honey, you know these trips wear me out. I'm scheduled on the earliest flight out on Friday and can't wait to sleep in your arms." "Dawn, do you have to stay and pack?" "Yes, I have to stay and do my part." I'd never known Dawn to lie to me. I know it was late, but I called Steve anyway. We talked about our next beer meeting for a few minutes. "Steve, I think Dawn is cheating on me, and I need some guidance." Steve responded, "I'm sorry to hear this, and I will help any way I can. First tell me, what makes you believe Dawn is cheating on you?" Taking a sip of beer, I said. Bobby asked me to pick him up at the airport, and I saw 3 of Dawn's coworkers exiting with their luggage. They were with Dawn in Dallas this week. Her office voicemail stated she was in Dallas through Wednesday and on vacation till Monday. Before I called you, I talked to Dawn, and she acted like she was still teaching the class until Friday. Steve listened to me without interruption, and then asked, how often did Dawn travel? "About twice a quarter." "Did she travel with the same group each trip?" "Mates." "Did each class last 5 days?" "Yes." "Has she always left on Saturday and returned Friday night?" "As far back as I could remember, she leaves on Saturday morning and returns on Friday night." What does she do when she gets home? She is tired when she gets home, takes a long bubble bath, and goes to bed. First thing Saturday morning, she washes her clothes. We go out to dinner and come home for some welcome home sex. Steve agreed something was going on and advised me to call Frank Jones, a pie he knew, and discuss it with him. I thanked Steve for his insight and said I'd call Frank in the morning. The next morning, I received a call from Frank Jones. Turns out Steve called Frank and asked him to give me a call. I told Frank the same story I told Steve, then answered his questions. Frank paused, then asked, "You've been happily married for over 24 years. 24 years? Do you really want to know what's going on?" "Yes." "Why are you asking?" "It's been my experience in cases like this that most end in divorce. The questions you have to answer are, how much do you want to know? How far back do you want us to go? How much are you willing to spend? Will you be able to handle what we find out?" I was not prepared for this. I sat there in silence and then said, "Frank, I want to know everything. When, where, with whom, as far back as you can go. I will spend whatever it takes to find out the truth. If I've been lied to, I want to know how deep." We decided that Frank would contact a fellow PI in Dallas. He knew to check on Dawn. He would have someone on his staff check on the training class schedules. They would also contact the 3 instructors I saw leaving the airport. In the meantime, I was to search the house for anything unusual. I wasn't sure what to look for or where to start. I rolled out the living room, the dining room, kitchen, Emily's room, and Kent's room for the time being. I decided to start with Dawn's dresser. Everything I saw in her dresser I've seen before, after opening the door to her closet and seeing so many boxes. I decided to check the bathroom instead. Her side of the bathroom did not hold any secrets. I went back to her closet and started searching, starting with her hanging clothes and working my way through each shoebox. I could not find anything out of place or raised a question in my mind. After searching the master bedroom, the guest bedroom, the den, garage, and attic, I still did not know any more than when I started. Frank arrived around 5 p.m. He installed cameras in all bedrooms, the den, kitchen, as well as a recorder for our phone. We went to the airport, found Dawn's car, and placed a GPS system in the trunk and a voice-activated recorder under the front seat. Back at the house, Frank and I had one of my pale ales while he brought me up to date. Dawn's class schedule varies per location, ranging from 3 to 5 days. The class in Dallas was scheduled for 3 days, Monday through Wednesday. Paul and Bev flew out on Sunday afternoon, returning on Wednesday night. Classroom material is shipped to the class location a week before the scheduled class. Instructors do not set up nor take down. Each location has staff to handle setup and tear down. Sitting there taking time to regain control of my anger. I thought of my father. "Gee, you must stay in control of your anger. You cannot think clearly when anger is in control." Storming off to the kitchen. I growled, "Darn it, that woman has been blowing smoke up. She will pay. Did you find anything during your search?" "No. I got us another beer, this time an IPA D&D pale ale, and told Frank I hadn't found anything out of place. The only red flag we could see is Dawn's need to wash her clothes. After some discussion, we decide Frank will intercept her bag at the airport, and I will research how to disable the washer so it won't work immediately. Before Frank left, he told me his Dallas contact is on site at Dawn's hotel, and he'll talk to his contact in the morning and then call me. Frank left, and I had another beer wondering how to break a washing machine. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the master bedroom. I slept in Kent's bed. But needless to say, I slept very little to keep up my routine and get my mind off things. I went into the office. Frank called about noon, and we agreed to meet at my house that afternoon. Frank arrived at 2 with an armful of files. He passed on my offer for a beer. This time, he was all business. The Dallas contact emailed his report with pictures attached. Frank pulled out a picture of 6 people sitting around a restaurant table. There were 3 women and 3 men sitting in couples. Frank asked, "Do you recognize any of these people?" I looked at the picture for a while before saying, "The only person I recognize is Dawn." He then handed me a picture of each person for a better look. Once again, I studied their faces several minutes without speaking. I handed Frank one of the pictures and said, "I think I've seen this person before, but I don't know where." Frank said, while they were eating, video cameras were installed on each floor of the hotel, facing down the hallway of each floor. The next series of pictures showed them leaving the restaurant, entering the elevator, and all 6 getting off on the 7th floor. The women entered room 707, and the men entered room 709. Pictures from 10:15 a.m. Friday morning showed two of the women exiting room 707. There were pictures of two men exiting room 709 Friday morning at 10:29 a.m. The next batch of pictures showed them exiting the elevator, walking through the lobby, then out the front door. These pictures gave me the impression this was a group of friends or business associates, not lovers. Frank told me they went down the street to a restaurant for lunch. Each paid for their meal and returned to the hotel. There was a batch of pictures showing them exiting their hotel rooms carrying their luggage to the elevator. Each approached the front desk and checked out. Frank turned to face me with a serious look on his face and asked, "Repeat here, man? I'm going to ask you once again. Are you sure you want to know everything?" Without blinking, I said, "Hell yes." Frank paused, still looking me in the eye, then proceeded, "On a scale of 1 to 10, how blunt do you want me to be?" 11. Don't hold anything back. Another file was handed to me as Frank gave me a narrative of what I was observing. Without going into the whole conversation, I found out the Dallas agents went into rooms 707 and 709 with the cleaning crew videoing both rooms. Turns out 707 and 709 are connecting rooms with a connecting inside door between them. They took the sheets off of the beds, sent them to a lab for DNA analysis, bagged their used glasses for fingerprints, and went through the trash. The Dallas P said the rooms reeked of sex, and all 4 beds had been used with stains all over them. Until the lab results came in, we wouldn't know if Dawn had participated in or just watched, but there had definitely been an orgy in the rooms. Thieves, we both know she was in that room getting screwed. Looks like the woman I married is a lying cheater. I said. I paced around the room, cursing for about 5 minutes. I stopped, looked at Frank and said, "Forget her? What do we do now? The cheater is due back tonight. First, let's go disable the washing machine." We pulled it away from the wall and cut one of the wires going to the motor. I think Frank wanted to do this first, just to give me a simple task to do, giving me time to get control of myself. We went back to the kitchen, and Frank hit me with something I never considered possible. He wanted to take a DNA sample from me and wanted to know if I could find a hairbrush with hair from each of the children. I sat down and asked, "What makes you think the children are not mine?" "I don't have any idea." He wanted to know everything, and this is just one item on our checklist. I thought for a minute, said, "We have a clipping of their hair before their first haircut. You only need 1 piece for each, right?" He said, "That will work." Frank placed my sample in a bag numbered 1. Mackenzie number 2. Emily's in number 3. We got a hair out of Dawn's brush and numbered it 4. He would send them to the lab in the morning. Frank had a contact at the airport that was going to try to intercept Dawn's luggage. She would be late getting home because of the time it takes to report missing luggage. Those tasks were out of the way, so we discussed my ability to act normal around Dawn. Could I welcome her home with a hug and a kiss? Could I sit and listen to her lie about her trip? Could I take her to dinner tomorrow and have sex with her? How long and how well could I lie to her? Frank explained his staff needs time to obtain and analyze the evidence. It may take several months to understand everything going on with Dawn. Could I hold it together for months? I told him, "I'll do whatever it takes. I want to know the truth." Frank reached into his pocket and handed me a bag of Viagra just in case. He then asked, "Would it be possible for you to go out of town on a 3 to 4 day business trip?" I thought about whom I could go see on short notice without raising a red flag to Dawn. A smile crossed my face. I looked up and said, "Yes. I can go to St. Louis and see one of my oldest customers. We will play golf, smoke cigars, and drink my beer. Dawn Fred really enjoys drinking my home brew. I will tell Dawn I'm going to leave Monday morning, returning Thursday afternoon. Will this work?" Why do you want me to go?" Frank said, "Good question. I figure if Dawn is up to something, she will not do anything to make you suspicious. She may let her guard down with you out of town slip up. I'm betting she had a great weekend and can't wait to talk to them again. The only place we don't have a bug is in her office. Wait a minute. Is there something she always wears or carries with her? Maybe we can attach a small bug to it. Do you have any idea?" We stared off into space thinking for a while, and I said, "The only thing I can think of is her briefcase." Frank responded, "It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. I'll leave a bug with you, and you can attach it to the briefcase tonight. It's time for me to leave. Are you ready for showtime?" I simply said yes. Before Frank got up, he said, "If you get a chance tonight or in the morning, check Dawn's panties to see if she leaked any fluids. My guess is these guys rode bareback. You may want to get checked for STD Plus and IVA. Good night. Give me a call if you get a chance this weekend. But remember to stay calm. I sat on the back deck with a porter and let my mind wander. Other than Dawn's desire to wash her clothes first thing Saturday morning, I could not think of anything that would give me a reason to doubt her. It's about 10 minutes before Dawn arrived. I got a call from Frank telling me they retrieved her luggage and it was on the way to the lab. Her again, he reminded to stay calm. Dawn arrived as always tired from her trip, but this time she was upset with the airline losing her luggage. She complained about 2 pairs of slacks she bought last week. Everything else was replaceable. What was important she had in her carry-on. She came into my arms, gave me a hug, saying, "I love you, and I'm glad to be home. I've missed you so much." After another hug and a kiss, she went upstairs for her bubble bath. And not in easy turns, I attached the bug to her briefcase, then watched TV, reviewing our 10 minutes together. Letting my mind drift back over Dawn's arrival, I couldn't detect anything but love from her to me. Tired from her trip, somewhat upset about her luggage, and happy to be home. I'm not sure my performance was in the same class as hers, but I tried. I realized I need to work on it, or she would see through me. I pushed these thoughts out of my mind, went upstairs, and prepared for bed where we would sleep in each other's arms. I guess Dawn slept late Saturday morning because she did not have to worry about washing her clothes. Before getting into the shower, I checked out Dawn's panties in the dirty clothes hamper. Talk about feeling like a pervert. I never imagined I would be checking out her underwear. I'm not an expert at this, but I couldn't see anything unusual about her panties. After taking a bath, I went downstairs, started the coffee, went outside for the paper, and waited on Dawn. She came into the kitchen while I was getting my 3rd cup of coffee. She was wearing her robe with a rested look on her face. I gave her my best smile, saying, "Good morning, sleepyhead. You look well rested and ready to start your day. Would you like a cup of coffee?" She smiled, then said, "Yes, thank you. I'd love a cup. I should lose my luggage more often if I'm going to get this kind of treatment." After eating breakfast together, I went outside to take care of my honey-do list. A couple of hours later, Dawn came outside telling me she was on the way to the grocery store. She wanted to know if I needed anything. I told her no. I was going to clean up and move my batch of English brown ale from the primary to the secondary while she was gone. We had dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, chatting about our week apart and discussing the upcoming week's schedule. I told her about my trip to St. Louis. She was happy to be home. She said, "I'm glad you're traveling instead of me. It's great to be home for a while. Bunch traveling just wears me out. If my luggage is not found by Wednesday, I'll go shopping for replacements after work Wednesday. To tell the truth, I hope they don't find it, so I can go shopping for everything but those slacks I've been wearing for ages." I laughed, and then told her all about my latest batch of English brown ale. I packed 2 cases of my homebrew and headed off for St. Louis. Yes, I know it takes over 8 hours to drive there, but what can I say? I like to drive. It gives me time by myself to think. I usually think about my business. However, this trip, my thoughts were about Dawn. I called Frank from the road. I gave him an update of how my weekend went. He didn't have any new information, but would be in touch. I was lost in thought, and 4 hours went by before I knew it. I called Frank again and asked, "Frank, I want it straight up. What does your gut say?" Frank took a breath and said, "I've discussed this with Joe in Dallas. We believe Dawn was involved in multiple affairs at once, and this affair has been going on for years." "Why do you believe that?" "Plus, they are very comfortable with each other. They entered separate rooms, and they did nothing to call attention to themselves. It takes years to get that comfortable with each other. My gut tells me you're not going to like what we find out about this group, including your wife." Frank told me the contact said the 6 people discussed the class, their families, and appeared to be very comfortable with each other. They paid their own expenses. They did not sit beside the same person at each meal, and they talked to everyone in the group. This group has been together for a long time. Outside the hotel rooms, they were friends. Inside the hotel room, they partied. The last thing Frank told me was to decide what I wanted to do about Dawn and the others in this group. I called Mike Davidson, my attorney, and asked him for the name of the best divorce attorney in the state. I gave him a brief update, and he told me he would have Dave Ford call me. I checked into my hotel room and called Dawn to let her know I arrived safely in St. Louis. Then I called Fred to confirm our golf outing. Around 9:30 p.m., Fred called to check on me. I told him I'd given his name to my attorney, and Mike was going to call Dave Ford for me. Frank laughed and said Dave Ford's name alone would scare the crap of any attorney Dawn contacted. I'm ready for this to end, only this time I'd be the one stunting on them. I believe in fair play, but if you mess with me, I'll make you regret the day you met me. They want to play hardball, then I'm ready to show them how well I can play. All day Tuesday was spent with Fred on the golf course. We played 36 holes of golf, smoked 2 cigars each, drank a case of beer, and had dinner at the club. Frank called me around 1 p.m. Wednesday wanting to know my schedule. I informed I was free the rest of the day and would drive home Thursday morning. Dave Ford called me about 2 p.m. and I got him up to speed. He was glad to hear how I was proceeding. He said Frank's company was one of the best. Dave wanted to know what I wanted to do. If Dawn is cheating on me, I want a divorce. I had to wait on Frank's group to finish the investigation before I can say how bad I want Dawn and her group to hurt. Go ahead and start preparing divorce papers charging her with adultery. Our discussion continued about gathering evidence at her next class, and if I was up to acting normal for months, Dave informed me in Georgia I could obtain a no-fault divorce quicker and cheaper than charging her with adultery. Since the children were adults, I wouldn't gain anything by charging her with adultery. After discussing this with him a little longer, I decided I needed to think more about how to handle the divorce. There was a knock on my door at 9 p.m. Wednesday night. I opened it to find Steve and Frank standing there. Boy, was I surprised to see them. I handed them a beer from my cooler, asking why they were there. Frank said, I have bad news and devastating news to tell you, and I wanted to tell you face to face. Steve does not know what I'm here to tell you, and I wanted to tell you face to face. Steve does not know what I'm here to tell you. I thought you would need a friend. It's up to you if you want Steve to stay and hear the bad news. I stood there with my mouth open, wondering what could be so bad they traveled to St. Louis to tell me. Yes, I want Steve to stay. I sat down and looked at Frank. He said, the bad news is we have the lab results back, and Dawn was an active participant in the affair with numerous people at once. One bed had evidence of all 6 being active on the same bed. The girls each had their own bed, and our evidence proves each woman entertained all 3 men on their beds. We identified Dawn by the DNA hair sample we got from your house. I'm sorry it turned out this way. Stunned, I sat there trying to comprehend what I heard. I don't know how long I sat there in silence with my eyes closed. I closed my eyes, my blood boiling, fighting to regain control of my anger. Slowly, I opened my eyes and whispered, what could possibly be worse than my wife being involved with 5 other people? Frank cleared his throat, then said, 2 of the men involved are the biological fathers of Kent and Emily. You're not the father of either child. Bolting from my chair, I screamed, what? The children are not mine. That woman will pay, and I'll be the one collecting. The woman has been having an affair for over 24 years and playing me for a fool. They sat there in silence and watched me pace around the room. My mind was going 1,000 miles an hour, trying to comprehend what I was told. I watched my perfect world collapse around me. What in the world was I going to do now? Never in a million years would I believe Kent and Emily were not my children, much less believe Dawn was involved in an affair lasting the length of our marriage. Frank was correct that this was devastating news. One thing for sure is they would pay dearly for this. I would teach them how well I play hardball. Steve and Frank sat there watching my emotions change from shock, disbelief, confusion, sadness, loneliness, loss, anger, rage, and eventually determination. I don't know how long I paced. Time just seemed to stand still. Now I know why Frank came to St. Louis and brought Steve with him. They were there to support me, as well as make sure I didn't do anything stupid. After I got control, we discussed my options and goals. I told them all 6 of those losers would pay big time for this. We got very little sleep, and I was glad they were with me. Without them, I don't know how I'd have been able to drive. Once we had the evidence, we would decide the most painful course of action against them. My divorce from Dawn would be very public and embarrassing for her. Yes, I know I'd be embarrassed too. Soon, everyone would know Emily and Kent had different fathers by my lying, cheating wife. In the state of Georgia, either party can file for a no-fault divorce. You file, wait 30 days. You're granted a divorce and divide the marital assets. If you file for a divorce on grounds of adultery, it takes months to obtain a court date. Then you have to prove adultery occurred. I really wanted to take Dawn to court on charges of adultery and drag them through the process. However, Frank and Dave convinced me to go after a no-fault divorce. It would be quicker and cheaper. I'd still be able to embarrass Dawn and her gang. I just had to decide when, where, and how. Back in Atlanta, Dave, Frank, Dave and I met in Frank's conference room to discuss what we knew, what we needed to find out, and how to make them pay. Paper Frank, did Dawn do anything wrong while I was in St. Louis? No, Dawn didn't do anything or have any phone conversations. Phone conversations that were inappropriate. Frank continued, we traced the gang of 6 back the past 5 years. 2 of the gang always reserved connecting rooms, but not the same 2 each time. Most of the time, all 6 were there, and sometimes it varied. There were times when one of the women would be there with the 3 guys. There were always at least 4 of some combination. This wasn't what I wanted to hear. I slammed my fist on the table, shouting, not lying, cheating woman will pay. Frank, find out everything you can about the gang of 6, including Dawn. Clearly, I didn't know the woman. I want to know if they're married, how many children they have, and whether the children were fathered by their spouses. Do they all work for the same company? Where do they live, and anything else you could find out? And with Dawn's schedule, Frank knew when and where the next class was scheduled. This gave Frank time to develop contacts, devise a plan to plant cameras and bugs in their hotel rooms. Yes, I know this couldn't be used in court, but I was going after a no-fault divorce. I needed information. One thing I learned from Dawn's calendar is that she had 3 classes scheduled between now and our 25th wedding anniversary. Our 25th wedding anniversary will be on a Sunday, and Dawn will end a class in Orlando on the Friday before it. I looked at the group and said, I want this to end the last day of class before our anniversary. I'll not celebrate our anniversary with her, and she will not like her gift. Gentlemen, this is when I stop being a cuckold to my lying, cheating wife, and she starts paying for 24 years of being a lying, cheating. This is where I turn my pain into their nightmare. Dawn will regret the day she met me. I owe her for being lied to each and every day for the past 24 years. A week later, we were in Dave's conference room being updated by Frank. George C. Thomas of Richmond, Virginia. Henry S. King of Little Rock, Arkansas. Charles K. Mixon of Columbia, South Carolina. Just D. Hopkins of Miami, Florida. Catherine G. Williams of Knoxville, Tennessee, and Dawn made up the gang of 6. They all worked for the same corporation and met in a new employee training program over 24 years ago. Wednesday following Dawn's last class found Frank, desk meet at Secretary, Dave, and I around a conference table. Dawn and Henry had the connecting rooms last week in Washington, D.C., and all 6 were there. We learned the 2 with connecting rooms slept together. The affair took place only in the connecting rooms. We discovered the women were all bisexual. On Saturday, they drew cards. The highest male and female were the ones who reserved the connecting rooms next time. George and Joyce won and will reserve the connecting rooms in San Diego. This time, Dawn, with the connecting room, got to have the first foursome with the men. With the exception of the connecting rooms, everybody was spread out on different floors. Different floors of the hotel. You never saw a woman go into or exit a man's hotel room, and they never exited from the connecting rooms at the same time. During the week, they had meals with others from the class. If you were not looking for something, you would never know these people were involved with each other. They spent a lot of time with their classmates during the day and early evening. Around 10 p.m., they would start drifting to the connecting rooms. Sometime after 2 a.m., they would start back to their own rooms. The only exceptions to this were Saturday and Thursday nights, where all 6 of them stayed all night in the connecting rooms. All of their discussions and interactions outside of the connecting rooms were like normal business associates. They discussed where they stayed, where they ate, ball games they went to, plays they saw, what their children were doing, about their vacations and their spouses. I guess after 24 years, it's easy to hide what's going on from the rest of the world. Luckily, once again, Frank's agents went in with the cleaning crews. Since the sex was confined to the connecting rooms, collecting and identifying hair and fingerprint samples for each person was simplified. We took sheets from each room for analysis, as well as taking samples from the women's soiled panties. Armed with the DNA evidence, we were able to identify George as Emily's sperm donor and Chuck as Kent's sperm donor. Watching all of the unprotected sex they had, there was no way Dawn could know who was the father of her children. George C. Thomas of Richmond, Virginia has been married for 24 years and has 2 adult children all living in the Richmond area. George and his wife will find out shortly that George has another daughter. Henry S. King of Little Rock, Arkansas has been married for 23 years and has 21-year-old twin sons. Charles K. Nixon of Columbia, South Carolina, married his high school sweetheart. They have been married for 25 years and have a son. Chuck is about to discover he is the father of another son. Joyce D. Hopkins of Miami, Florida is married and will celebrate her 25th wedding anniversary next month. Joyce is the mother of a son, 23 years old, and a daughter, 21. Catherine G. Williams of Knoxville, Tennessee has been married for 23 years and has 2 daughters and a son. Everyone in the gang of 6 has been married for over 23 years and appears to be as happy as I thought I was before discovering my wife is a lying, cheating woman. What we would like to know is if any of the 3 men is the father of any of Joyce's or Catherine's children. Odds are they are the biological father to at least one of their children. I bet their spouses would like to know the answer to that question. Frank hopes to know this by next Wednesday. How he plans to find out, I don't have a clue. Wednesday at Dave's office was a short meeting. Day class. Can you believe it? She plans on spending Thursday and Friday getting screwed before our anniversary. That woman doesn't have any respect for me at all. After giving me time to calm down, Frank sighed. Bierman, you're not the only spouse with children fathered by another man. Henry is the biological father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. George and Chuck are the sperm donors for Catherine's 2 daughters. Joyce is the only woman to have at least one of her children fathered by her spouse. George is the biological father of Emily and one of Catherine's daughters. Chuck is the biological father of Kent and one of Catherine's daughters. Man, I need a flowchart. I guess because I know my marriage is over and I've gone through the stages of grief. I'm able to act like a loving husband. This has become a game for me. Acting like a loving husband while plotting the destruction of Dawn, my lying, cheating soon-to-be ex-wife, has been entertaining. I figure if she can lie to my face for over 24 years, surely I can fake being a loving, caring, dumb husband for a few months. Frank's team would go through the same procedures in San Diego as they did in Washington. We would review the tapes and evidence collected to see if we were missing something. We believed everything would be the same as Washington. To say I was looking forward to Orlando and turning their world into a nightmare is an understatement. Since it is going to 3-day thrash in Orlando, all 6 of them planned to attend. 2 days of intimacy without their peers around was very exciting to them. Dawn proved she didn't give a damn about our anniversary by staying with her companions instead of rushing home to the one she loves. What they didn't know, I was going to be their Wednesday afternoon instructor. I'd conduct the last hour of the class while all of the students were still there to witness the gang of 6 public exposure and destruction. Dave Ford and his staff had all the information they needed to prepare the legal documents. He promised me everything I needed would be ready on time. Frank would have his staff on site and monitoring the gang members. Showtime was approaching. Dave brought Frank, Steve, and I worked through how to handle their exposure. The stage was set. Now I was ready for my turn at bat. Saturday after Dawn left, I called the gang of 6 spouses. I told them I wanted to surprise my wife in Orlando for a combination 25th wedding anniversary and 25 years with the company. Since their spouses started with the company at the same time my wife did, I think it would be fun for them to be there. This was my treat. There would be an airline ticket at the gate waiting for them. I told Ken and Emily about surprising their mother on Wednesday. The team mother on Wednesday and invited them to meet me in Orlando on Tuesday. Tuesday night I met with my children and told them everything. I spent hours going over how I found out, what evidence I had, how I planned on destroying their mother's world tomorrow, and how much I loved them. I told them, I'm not your biological father, but you are my children, and I'd always be your father. We cried and held on to each other. They asked a lot of questions, and I answered them truthfully without sugarcoating my answers. I asked them not to warn their mother, which they both promised me they wouldn't. Things looking into their eyes. I said, I want you both to be there tomorrow when I confront and embarrass the hell out of your mother. This is a lot to ask of you, and I'm sorry if I embarrass you. The fact you are not my biological children will be all over the Atlanta papers by this weekend, so we all will be embarrassed. You will see me being a bastard to your mother and her friends. My goal is to scare them and make the rest of their lives a living hell. If you go, you will hear me say almost anything to embarrass them. Nothing I say will change the way I feel about you. You are both adults, so I cannot adopt you. I would if I could, but know from the bottom of my heart. I love you and consider you to my children. You are free to choose whether you will be there. After all, she is your mother. You don't have to decide right now. Take time to think it through and make your own decision. Just remember, I love you now and for always. and with tears in his eyes, Kent asked to know, I know Mom loves you and you love her. Can you forgive her and move on? Why can't you and Mom go to counseling and work through this? Asked Emily. I looked at my children while trying to gain control of my temper. How do you answer in a calm, reasoning way unbelievable questions? Taking a deep breath. I know as children you always want your parents to stay together and always be there for you. Please close your eyes and let me take you on a journey. You've met the perfect person and want to spend the rest of your life with them. You can't bear being away from them any longer than required. After a fantastic honeymoon, you settle into your jobs, and several years later you have 2 fantastic children. You spend your time living for your family, going to soccer practice, soccer games, cheerleader camps, Girl Scouts, through teenage years, romantic vacations, and dinners with your spouse, holding the people you love most in this world. Living to spend every minute with the ones you love. Going out of town at the last possible moment and returning as quickly as possible to your loving family. Every day you thank God for your family and the happiness they bring you. You are happy and feel blessed knowing your life can't get any better. Pausing and letting my statements soak in for a moment. They have smiles on their faces. Kent, you are watching a movie starring your lovely wife. She's in a hotel room with 3 men and 2 women. Each woman draws a card from a card deck. Your wife gets a huge smile on her face as she shows everyone her ace of spades. The 3 men start removing your wife's clothes, and the rest was history. Kent sat there with tears in his eyes while Emily sobbed, pausing a moment for them to think about what I said and to gain control of their emotions. At the end of the movie, as the film credits roll by, you learn this group has been making at least 4 movies a year for the past 24 years. We can go over to my laptop and access a video stream of them in a hotel room a mile from us right now, making another movie. I've collected over 40 hours of tape of your mother and her gang from her last 3 trips. Second, you discover you are not the biological father of your children. Or Emily, you discover your husband is the biological father of someone else's child. How would this make you feel? I took a breath and continued. The person you love most in this world is leaving you and their children a day early to meet a group of people so they can have an additional day of sex. Plus, they stay over another 2 days for sex. When your spouse comes home, they need 24 hours to recover before they can be with you, the one they claim to love. How much do you think they love, respect, and care for their spouses or children? Your mother not only disrespected and lied to me, she disrespected and lied to both of you. And, choking back tears, said, Dad, I never thought of it that way. You're right. I wouldn't want my wife to treat me that way either. I've never looked at it as Mom choosing to spend more time with that group over staying home with us, much less how devastating it has been for you. I love you. I don't know if I can be there for you tomorrow. I'll let you know. God, I'm so sorry for your pain. You can count on me. I'll be there for you tomorrow. Dad, thank you for being my father. Emily continued. Kent, get your head of your view behind. Mom chooses her screw buddies over us. You will be there with Dad and me tomorrow. Stand up and be a man. Talk about being blown away. Emily's reaction and outburst was a total surprise to me. The look on Kent's face was priceless. God, I love my children. Emily looked at me with fire in her eyes. What's the game plan for tomorrow? I've invited the gang of 6 spouses to join us tomorrow. Their spouses think I'm having a party for our 25th wedding anniversary, and since their spouses have been with Dawn all these years, I felt it appropriate for them to join in the fun. You and Kent are the only 2 I've told in advance. This will be a total surprise to everyone else. I want them to freely let their emotions flow and respond to their cheating spouses. I'll give them a copy of all the evidence I have. Before I forget, you have some half-brothers and sisters you may want to meet at a later date. All 5 of the other spouses showed up at the hotel where we met, got to know each other, and had a nice lunch. At 2 p.m., we, including Ken, headed over to the hotel where Dawn's class was being held. The rest of my surprise guests were waiting for us in the hotel lobby. An attorney from Dave Ford's office, a PI from Frank's staff, and a video camera operator were my other special guests. At 2:30, a florist delivered the 25 red roses I'd ordered. Emily and the other women commented on how nice they looked. Emily had fire in her eyes. She was ready for battle. I took a moment to calm her down and let her know I was running the show. At 2:45, we started through the lobby toward the meeting rooms. Emily was ready. Kent was following Emily's lead, and the spouses seemed caught up in the excitement. With the 25 roses, I entered Dawn's classroom at 3 p.m., followed by John Manning, the video camera operator. Dawn turned bright red seeing me approach her with the roses and a smile on my face. I commented on her face matching the roses, and everyone laughed at my little joke. Dawn smiled, then turned toward the class and introduced me to them as JT, her husband. I looked out over the crowd, identifying where the other 5 were seated. True to form, they were spread out across the classroom. Looking at Dawn, I said, I know today is the last day of class, and before you leave today, I wanted everyone's help in making today memorable for you. This Sunday is our 25th wedding anniversary. Before I could continue, the group entered from the hallway with Emily leading the pack. The photographer got a fantastic shot of Dawn's face as they entered, and the look on her face was priceless. But the look on the 6 group members was one of total panic. Standing there with a huge smile on my face, I watched as Emily introduced Dawn to the spouses of her buddies. Emily was enjoying this drama unfold. This was a side of Emily I'd never seen. Her future husband better toe the line. This Sunday is our 25th wedding anniversary, and I wanted your help in making this special. Dawn will celebrate 25 years with this company next month. Isn't it exciting? 2 major milestones happening within a month of each other. George, Henry, Chuck, Joyce, and Catherine joined about the same time. I invited their spouses to join us here for this special occasion. John is videotaping this special occasion, so please say a few words for the camera before you leave. In a few minutes, I'll introduce you to the other attendees. I took this time to pause, catch my breath, slow down my racing heart, and take a look at the gang of 6 faces. And pout. Catherine, please come up and join us. This group slowly approached the front of the room while the other class attendees applauded. When Emily appeared at my side, I knew she was ready for fireworks. Picking Emily by the arm, I led her over to George. Then I said, Emily, I'd like to introduce you to George Thomas, your biological father. Dawn turned white as a ghost, and George's wife looked at me and asked me to repeat what I'd said. George is Emily's biological father, signed George. I handed him the first document saying, this is a request for a court-ordered paternity test. Handing him the second document, I said, I'm suing you for 21 years bad child support and emotional trauma. Finally, George, this is a copy of the suit I'm bringing against your employer for not enforcing the morality clause in your employment contract. I already have DNA results from an independent lab certifying you as the biological father of Dawn's daughter. Oh, Emily, the court-ordered test is just a formality. I turned to George's wife and said, don't worry, I have copies of all my evidence for you to use as you see fit. I'm not sure if she heard me because she was chewing George. The classroom was going wild. The other spouses were in shock and now understood they weren't invited to a happy party. Well, at least I was enjoying myself. Kent surprised me by stepping up to me. He stood up straight and just nodded his head. I was very proud of Kent at that moment. So we walked over to Chuck, where I introduced him the same way I did Emily to her biological father, saying, Kent, I'd like to introduce you to your biological father, the Charles Kent Nixon. The room was silent when they heard Chuck's middle name. In the silence, once again the attorney placed the documents in my hand. I went through each document with Chuck the same way I did with George. Chuck's wife wanted to make sure I had copies for her. Everyone in the room seemed to settle down since Dawn only had 2 children. I smiled knowing that I wasn't going to let the others get away without any pain. They had played, now they were going to pay. Dawn was sitting in a chair sobbing. Could I have everyone's attention? I know this isn't what you were expecting when I entered. Hold on tight, the fun is just starting. You could hear a pin drop, it got so quiet. Continuing, I found out 5 months ago that Dawn, Joyce, Antoine, George, Chuck, and Henry attend class so they can get together. This has been going on for over 24 years. Emily turned 23 4 months ago. You do the math. Now, I don't want the others to feel left out, so I'll share my information with the other spouses. The gang of 6 started yelling while their spouses were chewing them up. While all the chaos was going on, the PI from Frank's office started a videotape from one of their sessions. A hush came over the room while everyone watched the affair being displayed. This got everyone's attention. For those of you keeping score, Henry is the biological father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. George is the biological father of Emily and Catherine's oldest daughter. Chuck is the biological father of Kent and Catherine's youngest daughter. This means Joyce's son is actually her husband's child. Can you believe that? 6 out of the 7 children these 3 women had, only 1 was fathered by their spouse. The room was in total chaos. I'll not go into detail about the rest of the proceedings. Let's just say all the legal documents were delivered, their spouses were given copies, and major pain was inflicted on the gang of 6. Sending Don the divorce papers. I said, "Done it call. Done it come home, and done it come see me." Ready crap, you lying cheater. Sitting in my hotel room, sipping an SB extra strong bitter, I reflected on the way things happened with Dawn and her gang. Emily disrupted my script when she stood beside me. I planned on starting with Dawn, working my way through each member of her sex group, and then letting everyone know about the children. Emily wanted to move straight into confronting her biological father. My script went into the trash, and I went with the flow. I accomplished my objectives of letting the gang of 6 know that I exposed them to their spouses. I publicly embarrassed them in front of their peers. I served them with legal documents suing them, and I left them with very angry spouses. I'm feeling better about myself. While getting another ESB from my cooler, there was a knock at my door. Precipitating the door, I saw my children standing there. Last time I saw them, they were helping their mother to her room. They came in, gave me a big hug, and told me they loved me. Emily said, "Dad, I know you don't want to hear about Mom, but she is a basket case. I'm taking her home with me tomorrow. She needs the rest of this week to get herself together before she returns to Atlanta. I'm her daughter. I love her. I wanted to kick her behind for what she's done to our family, but she needs me." Emily still had fire in her eyes. I knew Dawn needed to be with someone, and I'm glad Emily stepped up to do the right thing for her mother. One thing I learned about Emily these past few days, she is a strong woman, and she would be very firm with Dawn. Kent said, "Dad, I love you and hate what Mom did to our family. Can I ride home with you tomorrow?" Of course my answer was yes. I'd love for you to ride home with me tomorrow. Emily stood up, gave me a hug, and said, "I'm going back to spend the night with Mom. I don't think she should be by herself." The last thing she said as she walked through the door was, "Dad, I love you." Ken spent several hours with me drinking beer. This with me before he returned to his room. Epilogue. It's been 5 years since I destroyed the world the gang of 6 lived in, and I'm happy to say they have been good years for me. I feel great about what I did to that group of cheaters. All 6 were fired the following week. They're divorced, broken, and alone. Strange how every time they get a decent job, their past comes back to haunt them and forces them to find another job. I'd like to take credit for that, but someone else is keeping track of them. They're trying to rebuild their lives and relationships with their children. I'm happy to say they didn't have a long way to go. Their former spouses don't even speak to them unless they want money. A few are making some progress with their children, after returning to Atlanta and spending one night in the house. I knew I'd never spend another night there. There were too many memories there for me to deal with. I moved into a hotel while I looked for somewhere else to live. Kent rode back with me to Atlanta and stayed in the house until he moved to Dallas. Alexis for his first real-world job. They seem to be happy with him and his work because he's been promoted 4 times. He's single, dates a lot, likes his job, and loves living in Dallas. This summer, we will discuss him joining my company. That week, even after 5 years, his relationship with his mother is guarded. Occasionally, they talk on the phone. Kent hasn't seen his mother since we left Orlando. Kent talks with Emily on the phone almost every day. The destruction the gang of 6 left in their wake when everything was exposed has affected all of us, especially the children. I don't know if Kent can ever trust anyone enough to get married. Emily did take Dawn to Naples with her for a week. Every time Dawn tried to explain, Emily told her to save it for her therapist. She didn't want to hear her lies. She told Dawn there would never be an acceptable explanation for her actions and the destruction of our family. Emily will celebrate her first wedding anniversary next month. Dawn was not invited to their small beach wedding. Emily and her husband Trey live here in Atlanta. Emily didn't want to work or be involved with my company. Well, she joined my company 2 years ago. I like her being close to me. Turns out she is a natural businesswoman. That was to say, Emily let Trey know up front what she would do to him if she ever caught him cheating. Yes, Trina was all about Dawn and her gang of 6. The spouses and children of the gang of 6 got together here in Atlanta 8 months after I exposed them. It helped being around people with the same feelings and trying to go on with life. The children bonded quickly and stay in touch with each other. We're going to Nashville in 3 weeks for another get-together. Turns out, when the gang of 6 started cheating, They would pair up as couples for the week instead of participating in group sex. Emily was named after George's mother, and Kent is named after his father. Dawn chose these names, forever linking her children to their biological father. Once this information became known, Emily and Kent turned on Dawn. Even after 5 years, they have very little to do with her. Emily will at least have lunch with Dawn, but Kent refuses to see her. At T's Puptions, I was deeply in love with Dawn until I discovered she was a lying cheater. I know some men can't move on with their lives. I'm not one of them. Actually, life goes on. So either they lay down, or you pick yourself up and move on. My children needed me, and I needed them. Dawn and reached a settlement. She kept the house, saying she has too many good memories there to give it up. I didn't. I also reached a settlement with George and Chuck. With the money I received from them, I placed in trust funds for Emily and Kent. I didn't want their money. I wanted them to pay until it hurt. 6 months after our divorce became final, I started dating. One of these days, I hope to find someone to share my love and life with. Looks loving someone and being loved is the secret to a long, happy life. Listen, until then, I'll continue to look and wait for Emily to give me some grandchildren to spoil.